The training wheels.
Kent came in as the former college township engineer, so he knows his stuff, which is good. Tom Saunders Trench.
We had like 5 or 6.
I think that like when they saw work plan, I think they are afraid we're going to talk about adding sewer or something.
Drastic.
Like
Right.
that.
Count, 'cause we went, we did kind of some backward.
So Jackie can't make it. We don't know about Sedalia. Everyone else is accounted for.
Yep.
Okay, let's go. Call to order the January 9th meeting,
Yes, not 10th. Sorry about that.
2023 of the Harris Township Planning Commission. Happy New Year, everyone. I think we had a
Happy
pretty
New Year.
straightforward agenda. Yay.
We like it. It's the first of the year.
We
First
do.
meeting.
We
of the year.
do. That was after not meeting in December. We covered a lot in November. Holy cow! You guys had a good holiday, staff, and got recharged.
Froze to a certain extent.
Yeah, a lot of change. Okay, so minutes from last meeting in November. Any motion to approve those? Second? Any amendments, corrections noted?
No.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the November minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Minutes are approved. Any public comment from people in the audience that for items that are not on the agenda? Great. Okay. Tonight's agenda, we have a pretty straightforward looking agenda. Let's approve it.
Did we do that by motion?
Yeah.
Approve the agenda.
Jeff, motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second from Amy. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. So business for tonight, nominating committee. Kent, thanks for asking Bob and Jeff last month, or November, to step in and do that. Fellas?
Thank you.
I'm sorry I asked.
What's your report, gentlemen?
We nominated and recommend Kent and Lori.
Amy.
Or
Maybe Lorick.
Baker and Lorick, attorneys at law,
Yep.
Yeah.
Lorick.
There you go.
I like it.
as chair and vice chair,
As chair,
respectively?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. That sounds wonderful. So we should make the motion to recommend to the supervisors, because they have to approve
No,
that.
no, you
No?
guys approve it.
Oh, we approve it.
So
Okay. Thank you for, Kent, Amy agreeing to serve? Awesome. All those in favor of that
Do we have an
nominee?
actual motion?
Did we get it? No, we didn't.
Move
Thank you
to
to
approve.
Thank you. And second?
Second.
Great, thank you from our committee members. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks, and thanks for doing that.
That was a tough job.
It'll be good to have
Lengthy
you guys.
We won't talk
discussion.
about, we
leading.
won't talk about deliberations.
A
Or
lot of
venue.
behind the scenes maneuverings. Okay, Amy, you have a introduction of our new member?
Yes, so Phil Becker is joining us as an alternate member on the Planning Commission. Phil lives on West Drive, so Country Place is officially taking over the Planning Commission. And Phil actually served as an intern for CRPA, the planning agency, recently. And I'll let Phil, the planning agency, like a year or two ago.
No, it was the call.
Well, it's Center Region Planning Agency
Within COG.
within COG, yes. Yeah, so if you want to,
Gotcha, planning. Gotcha, you're right.
if you want to go to the microphone and just introduce yourself a little more, that'd be great.
I will learn not to correct Amy soon. Yep. Thanks for helping me get sorted on this. Wow, there's a headlight.
Your headlamp's
My name is
still
Phil
on.
Becker. I've been
That's okay. It's valuable in places, but not in here.
Getting there because I don't see it when I.
Right.
My name is Phil Becker. I live up on just up the hill for 17, 18 years, something like that. As Amy said, I've done some planning adjacent work, and I've done some planning adjacent work in my job as a solar developer as well. So get to see how different planning commissions around the state operate, and some of them are more fun to visit than others. So.
What urged you to volunteer in Harris Township?
Mostly that my schedule opened up where I could actually come and do this at times. You know, I wasn't working at night all the time. I had been doing that before. And also being exposed to other planning councils and agencies around the state kind of said, oh, I can do that. Yeah, let's get involved in that. So it's good work. You know, it kind of helps lead the town in a direction that I think would be good. So.
Well, thank you for raising your hand.
Yep.
I think we have a good mix of generalists and some practitioners of the engineering and construction and design trade. So it's a good blend. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so 22 is behind us, 23 ahead. Work plan from last year. We got a lot done. A lot is still rolling forward into the new year. Amy, thanks for outlining some things that staff recommended. You want to go over those in some detail?
Yeah, I think it'd be
Okay.
good. And why don't we just, for Phil's education, since he's new, maybe we can just touch on what you guys did in
Yes.
2022 and then what's going to carry over into 23. You worked on the residential zoning districts, the review of that. You actually started that in 2020 and then continued on 2021, 2022, and we'll finish that up hopefully in 2023. There's still a fair bit to do. Remember, we were looking at kind of some of those hybrid zoning districts, perhaps. We started, and by some additional things come from them, adjacent municipalities, so that's good. We have some additional zoning districts that we would like to review Those regulations, we didn't get that started this year because we were finishing up the residential stuff and also the rural piece and some other things. So we'll take care of that next year. You did take care of the non-building sewage facilities planning waiver. The board adopted that ordinance and the criteria in September. And you did have some continuing ed. You had some training that was provided by the Center Region Planning Agency. And hopefully, Center Region is still understaffed. Mark is still doing 3 jobs. But hopefully, as things progress during the year, we'll have more opportunities to get you guys some more training as well on topics that are of interest. So that's kind of a snapshot of what you did in 2022. Moving into 2023, we had a couple of things that we thought you should put on your work plan. One is the rewrite of the sign ordinance, and again, we touched on that it's going to have to be completely rewritten because it is 60 years old. So that's going to be a heavy lift. We'd like to start some of that work probably in February because Mark's not able to be at our meeting in February. The review of the residential zoning districts, we'd like to see if we can complete this item next year. The review of the remaining zoning districts, this would be amendments for village, commercial, residential, office, the commercial and the industrial districts. And also we feel like there needs to be some further discussion on the corridor overlay district. The Planning Commission, the Shade Tree Commission has been looking at our landscape buffering regulations. And one of the discussion pieces they've been having is they asked me to do some research on the corridor overlay because the buffering regulations within the corridor overlay are pretty onerous. And when I did some research, the original ordinance was adopted in 1992 and was intended to preserve the agricultural character of our community and block view of businesses. It basically, it doesn't say block the view, but it says it doesn't want commercial strips and it wants clusters and it wants to preserve the agricultural character of our community, which I'm sure is a lovely goal, but it translates into a buffering requirement that is slightly ridiculous. Yeah. So they've been working on that. I know Todd, Mark, and I have talked internally about maybe it's time we rethink even having a corridor overlay district because maybe we don't need one anymore. There's been so many changes. I think that was a regional ordinance that came down following the 1990 comprehensive plan. So that's something that we'll look at. The buffering regulations, the Shade Tree Commission will talk at the joint meeting. You guys will be there with the board because we want to get an idea of if their intent with corridor overlay is still to basically reforest that section of the town and keep the businesses blocked from view, or if it's more to have a managed landscape area, a nice landscaped area. And that'll kind of shape some of the recommendations that they come to you guys with. We also would like to add an item related to the village parking back onto your 2023 work plan. If you remember, there was a discussion on the shared parking regulations that came out of the village parking committee's report. The supervisors decided to table action on that. They had some confusion as to how this would be applied and who this might help. And I think in talking with them and then in talking with Mark and Todd, we think that maybe it's better if we sit down with the supervisors. One of the things that's never been defined in all the years of the township, it's always mentioned that we want to have a harmonious mix of residential uses and business uses within the village. But I don't know what harmonious mix means. And I think to some people it might mean 90% businesses, 10% residential, and to some people it might mean 3% businesses and 97% residential. So I think the supervisors should have a conversation and engage the residents and the businesses within the village to discuss defining what a harmonious mix would be, and then using that. I was talking actually with a business owner today, places like Kennett Square, Chester County, Lidditz, Elizabethtown, other places, they have central business districts. And in their central business district, they have different zoning, right, to allow for these businesses and relax parking, some other things. So if the supervisors can better define that harmonious mix, and we say, like, let's establish, we can't really have a central business district, we're kind of tiny, but maybe we have a village commercial core district, and that becomes the overlay that was discussed by the parking committee. And we look at different regulations within there that help, and take into account that there are 5 properties that don't have any off-street parking available to them, and take into consideration some of the fact that some of those properties are all impervious coverage and don't have any pervious coverage, and look at that in a different way. And that all blends into the whole village parking discussion itself. So that's something we'd like you to consider including on your work plan for next year. I think that's something that the members of the parking committee will be I know I talked with, again, a business owner today, and I know she's planning on coming to the meeting January 25th, because I think they're very interested in making sure that this moves forward and that there is some relief written into our regulations. So, and then I mentioned the landscape buffering regulations, and then Todd wanted me to add, and Todd can unmute himself if he wants to add anything. He'd like to, we've talked about it, looking at our home occupation regulations. I think some things have changed, and looking at what we're allowing, what we're not allowing. Todd, if you want to add anything to that?
What does that mean?
Yeah, my cursor isn't working too well tonight. No, I don't think there's much to add to it. I'll remind the Planning Commission that we did talk about this a little bit. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. And I know in the throes of the pandemic, whenever we were working from home quite a bit, did a lot of research on what other municipalities have been doing and what, you know, sort of the history of home occupation regulations. So I can kind of resurrect that information from previously, but certainly not the highest priority of things that we have to do. But it's something that is in desperate need of attention, because our regulations, like most of the ones we're talking about changing as they relate to home occupations, are archaic, to be polite.
What, and remind us in brief what home occupation covers?
Well, the home occupation regulations are intended to allow people to make use of a small portion of their house, their dwelling unit, up to 25% of it for gainful employment, but it's typically supposed to be pretty low intensity uses, although the list of uses that in our ordinance that you're allowed to do as home occupations have the potential to allow some pretty high intensity things. There's a short list of accessory regulations that go along with that. Just as with everything else we're talking about, newer versions of these regulations ask that the elected officials develop a philosophy for what they would like to see as far as home occupations go. Do they want them to continue to be low impact, where very few, if any, customers, excuse me, actually show up on the site of the home occupation, which relieves traffic, relieves parking, relieves those things? Or do they want people to have more of an opportunity to have a little bit more impact in those neighborhoods? So that's something that the Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors, will have to discuss probably independently and together to decide what philosophy is best for this township.
Yeah, I agree, and I would say even we'd have to look for, make sure we don't allow uses that would encourage lots of deliveries going and coming from a residence, because that could take a residence and make it not a residence.
It's a good addition.
I'm sorry.
Speak up.
I'm sorry, yeah, I was just saying, I was commenting too that as far as home occupations, I think we should make sure that we don't have home occupations that would open up a lot of deliveries coming to the home or leaving the home, or, you know, lots of storage, things like that, because then it could turn into a, you know, not a non-residential use at some point.
Are these, Amy, in some rough priority order, would you say, or not necessarily?
Not really. I would say that you should probably leave review of the residential zoning districts as your top thing, because you've already been working on that, and the sign ordinance as your second item, because that's something we'd like to, that's something that really needs to get done.
Yeah.
And
on that, sorry to cut in, we need an early sense from the board on sort of where philosophically
Yes.
they're
yeah, that was,
aiming.
I think with the joint meeting, we're going to have a lot of philosophical conversations with the board, because we need to get their sense of, do you want to regulate signs the way you have been in terms of the amount and number, or do you want to kind of look at loosening things a bit? So I would leave those things as number one and number two. I would say let's maybe put village parking as 3, the landscape buffering as 4. I think they're both going to come in right around maybe the same time. And then
Extra
home occupation and the remaining zoning districts. And then I think we should also leave on the item about continuing education.
Agreed. I had noted to make sure that was added. Okay, well, it's a busy year.
So
Good thing you're gonna take charge of it there,
Okay,
Ken.
so we're gonna go through that at the 25th meeting then?
Yes, so you don't all have to come, and it will be, CNET will be covering it, so you will have a Zoom option as well, if you prefer to come that way. But I do need, hopefully Kent and Amy, or Kent or Amy, one or the above, to come, and you'll go through the 2022 work plan and then talk about what's on 2023. And then there are a couple of, philosophical things we'd like to have. And I really would like you guys to participate in the landscape buffer conversation with the Shade Tree Commission while they're there.
Okay. So are you gonna prepare a draft
Yes.
of this for
So what
23
I'll
then?
do is tomorrow I will send you a draft of the 23 work plan to look at. And if you can get me back any comments by Friday, that would be super helpful.
Okay.
The joint meeting would not be the only opportunity to discuss buffering with the Shade Tree
Right,
Commission.
right. This is just,
An early view.
yeah, because they, like I said, they've been working on it, and they are at a point, they have ideas, and they have a lot of good ideas. They met actually with Scott Burke from Scott's Landscaping at their last meeting in November and talked a lot about it. And this is sort of a regional issue as well. And we used to have regional Shade Tree Commission meetings back in the before times, before COVID, and we're kind of hoping we do these again, because one of the conversation pieces they've had is it might be good if there were a regional list of species for buffers, and then it was standardized kind of across the municipalities. So that's something that we may want to consider, and if that conversation can happen. But then also just looking at the sheer amount of trees, and then how they're getting put into a buffer by someone who isn't a trained landscape professional, which is an issue. I mean, our maintenance facility is a good example. We got clumps of trees, and it was put in by our engineer. We didn't pay a landscape professional to design the plan, and then we lost a bunch of trees the first year. So, and there are also maple trees, and we have an alarming number of maple trees on that site. And if we get, that's another piece to this conversation, is making sure we're not having monocultures.
Sure. Hardy species and climate change tolerant species, etc. Okay. Well, anything else on this? Questions, comments? Okay.
Oh, Bob has a question.
Missed that. Thanks, Bob.
Well, no, it's just floating through my brain. It's slow tonight. Right, Lori?
I'm sorry.
I know we talked a little bit about it during the official map, and we were talking with Jerry on stormwater. Is that something that we need to look at in our stormwater basins, our stormwater situation?
I would say that probably at some point we're going to need to discuss that. I don't know. We're ending up with some orphaned basins up on the hill. We have one right now, the Hill neighborhood, but I'm not quite sure that it's reaching critical mass yet. And I know we had talked with the official map about maybe putting some of these outfalls and things onto our official map, and we decided not to do that. So.
Yeah, I don't know where that exactly falls within, is that something that we do, or is it something that's going to fall right to the supervisors?
For staff.
Right. I think that the discussion, and I know College Township, Jerry has told me this, shared this with me. I know College Township had some orphan basins, and they set up through their council like a special assessment of some sort for the folks with the basins in that neighborhood, and then they took the basin over, and basically the township's maintaining it now. So we may end up at a place where we have to have that conversation with the supervisors and see what they want to do. Because we know we have one basin, again, up on Kimport that is not being maintained because the HOA is defunct. That was supposed to be maintaining it.
How about the one all the way across here? Did you know that there's one up there behind the houses near the end, by the houses on the right-hand side?
I think I probably knew there was one up there.
It's huge, but
Yeah, I don't know who's maintaining that.
it's in everybody's backyard.
Yeah.
It gets right up against I don't know whose property would be behind there. The park,
The preserve.
close to
Yeah.
that. Did you ever notice it was there? It's because she lives up on,
There's a drainage area,
there's a retention pond.
really?
Yeah, it's dug out. It's actually behind the Grunenberg's house.
Okay. No, then who knows?
And I don't think anybody maintains it, ever since that has been developed there in the 90s. I think Craig mows it. You know?
I don't know.
So what do you-
Jerry,
and what do you do when they do fail? Or what do you do when they do become in service? Does that fall onto the township?
so we had this conversation with the folks on Kimport. So back in 2018 or 2019, it was definitely before COVID. There was one gentleman, God love him, who was maintaining that basin by himself. And it's like half an acre, and he was out mowing it by hand, and it needed some work. And he tried to have an HOA meeting, and he invited the HOA to the township building, and I came, and like 10 people showed up, and there's way more than 10 people in that Myers Estate side of the hill. And nobody wanted to take it on, and the HOA, it was so old, it was done in the 80s, and the thing sunset after so many years. And he basically, I don't even think he mowed it last summer. It's behind, near Nigel's house. I'm not sure that he mowed it, but it's probably going to be, that's going to be our first test case where we're probably going to have to come in. They're not collecting, there's not like a dues they're collecting, there's none of that. He was paying for all this out of his pocket. So we'll probably have to come in and say, and that might be a case, and College Township did it, and Kent, maybe you were still there when they did it, I don't know. But College Township came in and it was failing, and I think they said, okay, we'll take it over and we'll fix it, but we're going to put an assessment on your house to do it.
Yeah, I mean, college actually, I mean, they did that with a couple and then actually created a policy to allow for, you know, any development that was interested, although it's pretty onerous. Most properties decide it's easier for them just to maintain it themselves. So is what they end up deciding. But yeah, so college has a couple now, and normally these properties are owned by someone, including the one on Crestview. I'm sure it's owned by somebody. Maybe it's an association. So then you go back and you have to look at what was their record, what was their deed saying as far as who's responsible for their open space or whatever that's on. So they'd probably be responsible for it. It's just probably doesn't have much need.
I don't know how fast they degrade. I don't know what happens to a certain point. Some of them never collect any water at all. I don't know. I have this thing about driving around even after rainstorms and seeing if any water's in these things, and I'm always like, oh, look, there's water. And then other ones are completely, I've never seen any water in them. Retention, well, they're so expensive to a neighborhood to install, and it takes up a piece of ground that actually, to me, looks rather ugly. And then when they don't do anything, I get like, well, why'd they put that in? Where's all the engineering with that? It never has any water in
Well,
it.
it's good that it's not holding water. It's good that it's working then.
I don't know where we need one.
Where?
Up on Walden.
Oh, yeah. Waldenheim has some stormwater issues we're trying to address. Yep. Yeah, I mean, to me, these basins end up being almost like a private road, right? Private roads are expensive, and they're built. Some of them, we have older private roads that probably aren't built quite to our township standards. Kennard Road's a probably good example of that. In fact, we met with the folks from Kennard Road back in the fall because their road is. They were telling us I haven't been on it, it's full of potholes, and they were like, it's not passable anymore. And we did some digging. That used to be the road to State College, and then they built Atherton Street, and the state abandoned it. And the Penn State president used to live out there. And so Penn State would go and put some asphalt down and kind of maintained it while they were picking him up to take him to State College every day.
Oswald.
And then they stopped, and the road's in horrible shape, and they have stormwater issues. And they came to us, and the way Kent talks about onerous, the way our regulations are written is you can come and propose that we take over your private road, but you have to bring everything up to township standards. And in the case of Kennard Road, that means taking land from folks, and that would probably cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more. And they were telling us like the road assessment on each house is like a couple $100 each year. Like they have 20 houses or something out there. So these stormwater basins are like, to me, they're like the new private road situation where you have some of these older ones, like Liberty Hill, Springfield Commons, they all have active HOAs. the gates. They have active HOAs, and they have people that are managing these HOAs. These other basins with these other, Willowbrook's HOA, I think, is pretty much defunct. Fairfield's stormwater basins are still owned by the developer, which is Hawbaker for some reason. So, yeah, it's varying degrees of issues out there.
Sounds like not planning commission business in the near term, but
No.
maybe mid or long. Okay, let's move on then to the agenda for February, which obviously we have an early start with this draft work plan. Is there anything else that you want to bring to the group's attention?
Yeah, we were planning on, I don't know, Todd, are we going to have any plans in February?
As of now, we have nothing.
Okay. So we were planning on devoting, because Mark has to go to he's currently the Half Moon Township planner as well as our planner, so he has to go to Half Moon Township that evening. So we were planning on focusing on the sign ordinance next month.
Okay. Okay. We're going to go to reports. Dorothy, thanks for coming. Is there anything that you weren't here when we asked for public comments before we got into the agenda?
I've always wanted to come to a planning commission meeting, and I was hoping you might talk about what's going on up with Sonder up there. But I don't know if you will.
Not tonight. It has been on our agenda, and I imagine it will be in the future. But tonight's meeting is a fairly sort of beginning of the year, new leadership, new work plan, kind of pro forma stuff. So come that Tuesday in February. We're usually third Mondays, but that's a Tuesday because of the federal holiday.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
I'm enjoying the conversation.
Good.
But
Okay.
I can't always hear, so can I don't want to be bothered, but is the sound better over there?
Yeah, probably.
Must be the heater.
Yeah, it's the fan from the furnace.
Any zoning permits to
Yes.
circulate? Okay, so we're going to look at these as we do some others. CRPC, we did not meet this month, but we did meet in December. And I would say the two items of regional interest or municipal interest in Patton Township, we spent some time looking at amendments to the planned community district, which is Toff Trees. They're going to change their height requirement a little bit, relax their height requirement a little bit, or limitation a little bit for one of the sections where they're hoping to redo some of the main building of Toff Trees. And this ties into the major developments going on in West Toff Trees, which I have mentioned previously. And then our official map came up. So Mark talked about the official map to the Center Region Planning Group, and they took comments, and they're going to forward those. You said the 45-day
Yeah, we got them.
review, so that all went pretty straightforwardly. And that's it. We meet next in early February. I don't think we had a report on CCMPO.
No, I can just add, we had submitted comments on the State College Area Connector project. We had released a statement. PennDOT wrote back to us and essentially said thanks, but no thanks. Supervisor Graham brought up at the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee today, why don't we focus on or talk about the connector project and its impact it's going to have on the Center Region Climate Action Plan and concerns? And they said, well, I don't know. So we're not getting, we went to, Supervisor Hard and I went to Patton Township in December and talked about our concerns with the project, and they have not just made any comments to PennDOT or indicated support for us. So we might be fighting this one alone.
What about
They've not said anything.
big climate action group, and they have a
Yeah,
high sustainability type of
disappointing
profile?
because PennDOT told us, they tell us different things when we ask why they don't look at climate change. And they say, oh, it's a much bigger thing than your climate plan, Amy. We don't need to look at yours yet. We'll look at that later. But we're like, but you eliminated the route that was the most direct to get the trucks to 80, which is what we thought you were trying to do. So we're working on trying to get a conversation with whoever the new Secretary of Transportation is about the project.
Just go straight to Pete.
Yes, Secretary Buttigieg, I'm sure can help us. Or the new governor. I'll talk to Governor Shapiro.
Okay, thank you. Bob, did the Watershed Commission?
We met in November. We're going to meet on the 18th in January and go through some reorganization. We'll have new officers, and we've been doing a lot of outreach to develop the kind of a informing people and talking to people about the Watershed Commission, and that's been going on from Half Moon Township and Potter Township the whole way down to Milesburg. So it's moving. It's gaining some momentum. So we're moving.
That was important to you. Thanks for continuing to serve there. Okay, Amy, recent actions by the Board of Supervisors.
The board heard an update from the new owners of Tussey Mountain. Actually, they're really interesting people that own Tussey now. They're very committed to trying to do something with it and making it a premier ski school kind of destination, and also some year-round stuff. Tussey is interesting in that Tussey was granted public sewer in the 1980s because it had a failure of its on-lot septic system, but it was written into the 537 plan when they were granted sewer that they're not in the regional growth boundary, so they can't upsize their line. They have like a 4-inch lateral. So the things that they want to do up there, they're going to need additional sewer capacity, so they're going to have to submit a DRI, which is different than the DRI certainly that we heard from Mr. Songer.
Remind us what a DRI is.
Development of Regional Impact application to the center region, because our sewer is all regional. So they're going to have to do a DRI to be admitted into the growth boundary to be able to do some of the things that they want to do. So they're kind of gearing up. They were telling the supervisors that one of the owners used to ski there from like 1998 on. He was on a ski team. He was a ski instructor. He has a day job. He's like an environmental scientist or something, but he was saying like the infrastructure is just awful. Like the ski lifts are awful, the snowmaking equipment is awful, and they need to get some capital so that they can start replacing these things. They want to expand the deck this summer, which doesn't really trigger much of anything in terms of the sewer, but might help them, make some of the capital that they need to try to work on some of these projects. They've talked a lot about kind of partnering with the mountain biking craze that's going on right now with folks that are going into Galbraith Gap and others to mountain bike and things. So they have good ideas. It's the sewer is an interesting conundrum for them because they have the sewer, but they can't really do anything to their property until they're allowed into the growth boundary. And, one of the things with the DRI application, we've talked about this kind of in-house, the DRI looks at, can you do this use elsewhere within the growth boundary? Well, in Tussey Mountain's case, the answer is no. There is only one ski resort within the center region, so it's not like they're going to go put it over by the Colonnade or something. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens and to kind of see. They just wanted to kind of talk to the supervisors and just tell them, like, this is what we're thinking and this is kind of what we're working on. They've met with staff a bunch. They're really interesting guys, really energetic guys, and, I really hope they do something with that property and try to make it what they want to make it. So, yes, Jeff.
Does that open up any precedent? They're in agriculture, right?
No. Actually, I think part of Tussey's in ag and part might be in natural areas now.
Right.
But I think the thing that makes it unique is that they have sewer. So if they wanted to remember, some of you may remember, years ago when we put in the recreational resort designation within the zoning, and Mountain View took advantage of that. You have to be within the sewer service area and have to have sewer to be able to do that. So Tussey right now couldn't take advantage of that. So if they wanted to, they would have to be within the growth boundary. And even doing stuff like they want to have they were talking about a kids lodge, so the kids would have a place that's away from where the adult lodge is. Well, that's more bathrooms. Well, they can't technically do that right now. They can't do anything that adds more bathrooms.
And this would require, if they were to propose this, it's unanimous
No, it's
approval.
a super majority.
Super majority of the 5 municipalities
Yeah.
and the borough.
Yeah.
5 townships in the borough.
How far does that 4-inch line go?
And we think it goes up Bear Meadows Road. It was run to them, just to them, in the 80s, and it's to the edge of their parking lot.
Is it 4-inch all the way down to 45 or just to?
I have no idea.
So-
I just know the lateral, I think, is 4 inches off the
Okay.
line. I think they put the beneficial reuse line because they have beneficial reuse water up there for ski making, snow making. I think the beneficial reuse water line is very close to where that sewer lateral was put way back when.
Okay.
Oh, and then we, reappointed Amy and Kent to the planning commission, which was a good choice. And we appointed Phil as an alternate, and we reappointed Sedalia as an alternate.
Mhm.
Also good choices.
And those are 4 years, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Alternates are 3, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you go to the microphone, please?
I have a question about the beneficial reuse line. How much water are they getting through that?
I don't know that they're actually using it yet, and I don't really know the details because the sewer authority ran that. So that
And
was
it-
run a couple years ago.
Is it coming down from the other hotel across?